Hey everybody, welcome to Fit Tip Tuesday. Today is a mini episode of the Baby Lock Ovation Serger manual. I'm going to be working with pages 54 and 55, which cover the 4-thread safety stitch. This is the little sister of the more common 5-thread safety stitch, and I got a question from a subscriber who wanted to know how to use it and how to use a subsidiary looper. So I'm going to cover all of that in this video today. The 4-thread safety stitch is a combination of a chain stitch and a 2-thread overlock. So it's got a little bit less going on than the 5-thread safety stitch, which is a chain stitch and a 3-thread overlock. So let me show you what it looks like. I stitched out these two samples. This is on a knit and this is on a woven, and you can see there's a 2-thread overlock here, and then you have your chain stitch, and this is the top, what the top of the stitch looks like. If I flip it over, you can see here there's my chain stitch, and the lower looper threads are really visible here. They're light blue on top and they're dark blue on the underside, so you can see what's going on. The cool thing about this stitch is that you can make it in 3 different widths depending on which needle you use for your chain stitch. In front of me right now I have the 3/8 inch stitch. This is the narrowest, the 3/8 inch, and that's with the needle in the C3 position, or the needle closest to the knife. Then I have a sample of the 1/2 inch. So all you need to do to get this is to move your needle over to the middle, or C2 position. And then if you want a wide 5/8 inch seam, you would put your needle in the C1 position. Okay, so these are the 3 widths that you can make with your 4-thread safety stitch. The 4-thread safety stitch can be used when you're sewing with knits to stabilize your seams, or if you have long seams with woven fabric, it works really well. So on your next project, maybe give it a try. Now what I want to do is show you the machine setup. All right, so you can see I've already positioned my needles in the O1 or right needle position and the C3 position here. So I have the needle set up for that 3/8 inch width stitch. The next thing I want to show you is the knife is going to be up. We're going to be using the knife cover. Unlike when you use the chain stitch and you have to put the table on, this has got the knife cover because the knife is going to be up, and we're not lowering the upper looper for this stitch. So when you do a cover stitch or a chain stitch, you put your upper looper down. Instead of doing that, we are actually going to cover up the hole that you would thread the looper with. So to do that, we have to engage the subsidiary looper, and that's this guy right here. Okay, so see, it's actually on a hinge, and if you pick it up, it rocks to the front of the upper looper, but you want to make sure that you adjust it so the little pin on the end is in the hole, and that's how you engage the subsidiary looper. It's really very easy, and the fact that it's attached to your upper looper means you'll never lose it. I've worked with other brands of serger where that's actually a separate little piece you have to put on, so it's really nice that it's just right there. Just rock it over, click it in the hole, and you're good. So we've got the subsidiary looper on, we have our needles in the right spot, our knife is up. We're going to set our width to 7.5, and for the first sample I'm going to show you, I'm going to have my differential feed set on N, or neutral. Let me show you that over here. And we're going to use setting A. So if you're working with the Ovation or the Triumph or the Evolution, you're going to be using setting A. And our tension on our chain stitch thread, needle thread, is going to be between 4 and 6. So I'm going to put it on a 5 for right now. We're going to set our chain looper thread to chain stitch. So make sure you do that. That's over here. And I've already put I've already threaded the chain looper to the point where I'm going to put it in the ports. And here's my thread for my lower looper here. And I already threaded the needle as well. If you need help threading your machine, I'll put links below for my how to thread for a chain stitch, so you can see how to, thread these things. But basically, they're ready to go in terms of just putting them in the port. So I'm going to set my serger to threading, and I'm going to turn the hand wheel towards me until the thread paths sort of click into place here. All right. I'm going to start with my chain looper, and I'm just going to stick it in the port and press the button. All right, and then if you open the door, you can see this little box right here. That's where that thread is going to deposit. So I'm going to just spool out a little more thread from my spool, and I'm going to press it again until I get about a 4-inch tail here. So see, that's about 4 inches. So now I know that that thread is good to go. I'm just going to shut that. Then I'm going to thread my lower looper. Okay, so that's good. The overlock needle is coming from the upper looper thread path. So that's a little bit different than threading your needles either in the needle thread path for an overlock or for the needle thread path for the chain and cover stitches. So the overlock needle is coming from the upper looper. So I've got it here. So instead of going down into a port, I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to come up and over like you would do. And then this can be threaded in that overlock needle, which is in the back. So I'm going to put my presser foot down now, because that just gives me a little bit more room. All right. And then I'm going to thread my chain looper. All right, so now I've got those all threaded. I'm going to put them off to the right like that under the presser foot. I'm going to put all my covers back on. All right, let's give it a stitch to see how it looks. Just using, just pieces of cotton. So I'm just going to put my fabric under my needles to start, and I'm just going to start stitching. Oh, and by the way, my stitch length is on like 3. All right, see what a nice stitch that is? And you can see that the chain stitch is about 1/8 of an inch from the base of the 2-thread overlock. So to make it 1/8 of an inch wider, or 1/2 inch, you would move your needle from the C3 position to the C2 position. And, I can just scoot it over to show you. So if I unthread, or I'm sorry, I'm just going to remove the needle. I'm just going to stick it in the middle position. Now, the Ovation has these little windows above the little screws to tighten the needle, and you can see the end of the the top of the needle is in that window, that means it's inserted properly. So keep inserting it or pushing it up until you can see the top of the needle in that little window. There's also a window in the back for the overlock needles as well. So I'll stitch it on this side 1/2 inch wide. Okay, so now you can see the difference side by side between the 3/8 and 1/2 inch. And then of course, if we move that needle over again to the C1 position, that will give us the nice wide 5/8 inch seam. So depending on the pattern you're working on, whatever seam allowance you're working with, you can, play with the width of these things. I'll just do the wider one on a separate piece of fabric here. I'll just do it right here. All right, so here is our wide 5/8 inch 4-thread safety stitch. So I had my differential feed on N for neutral because this is a woven fabric. So if you're going to use this to stabilize your seams on your knit project, make sure you do a sample and check your differential feed setting before you start working on your garment, because the same rules apply as for a 4-thread stretch stitch. So make sure you do a test. If your differential feed is set too high or too fast for the fabric you're working on, it's going to shove more fabric in underneath these loopers and it's going to look like a gnarly mess. So just to give you an example of what that would look like, I'm just going to do a knit here. This is a relatively stable knit, so let's just try it with the regular neutral setting and see what happens. All right, so I'm just going to lay this here, and this actually looks pretty good on the neutral setting. So not every knit needs to have a differential feed set higher than N to I have a range from 1.3 to 2.0, and there's a couple clicks in between as well, so you can really fine tune. But what I want to show you is if I jack up my differential feed to 1.5, I just want to show you what that's going to look like. All right, so see how it gathered it up? And it looks pretty nasty. So this would be an example of shoving it in there too fast and it starts to gather it. And considering the fact that this is a really heavy, stable knit, that's pretty impressive that it, was able to make it look that gnarled up. So let me just show you on a woven, if you forget to set your differential feed for woven and you go to sew, look what happens. All right, so this is again at 1.5, which isn't even the highest setting, and you can see it's gathering it up. All right, so that is my little tutorial on how to do a 4-thread safety stitch. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments below. If you love this video, please click the subscribe button and click the little bell, and then you'll get notified every time I upload a new video. I hope you guys have a great week, and I'll see you next week for Fit Tip Tuesday.